Hello, my name is Vanya and I work as a CTO at Tengai Unbiased. And I'm also one of the co-founders of Sweden's largest network for female programmers called Pink Programming. And this is Sprosi, švedku. When I was younger, I never knew that you could actually work as a software developer. I knew that I liked problem solving though. So after a lot of thinking and doing other things, I decided to study mathematics. So I studied Master of Science in Engineering Mathematics. And then as part of that program, I was introduced to programming. And yeah, I loved it immediately because you get to actually use your problem solving mind to be creative and solve a problem in your own way. So then I started to focus more on that, and yeah, then it was an easy choice for me to go down that path. As a software developer, it's very easy to find a job, and in fact, I took a year off my studies to work for a year as an iPhone app developer. And then before I even graduated, 6 months before, I already had 2 job offers. Programming skills are in such high demand all over the world. It's not very common that developers apply for a job. It's more common that if a company is looking for developers, they reach out on LinkedIn or something similar. I would say it's flipped, so it's kind of like the company has to show the candidate why you should work here. The company has to convince the developer to leave their current job and join a new company. Some companies, they just have a basic interview. Some have tests, so you have to do a code test, either that you get an assignment that you take home, or maybe you get invited to the office and you get to actually draw code on a whiteboard or something. So now I work at a company called Tengai Unbiased, and I thought I would introduce you to Tengai and let her introduce herself to understand more what I'm working with. Okay. Alright, so Tengai, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Tengai. I am the world's first unbiased interview robot. Nice to meet you.
So basically this robot is used for recruitment because it's quite common that recruiters use their gut feeling to choose which candidate they like the most instead of their judging based on their skills. So with Tengai, she can interview the candidates because she won't judge the candidates based on their looks, their gender, age, background. She will treat all the candidates the same and then recommend the best candidate to the recruiter. And at Tengai, my work is to lead the tech team. So some of my colleagues have recruiter or HR background. So basically they have to tell me what questions she is supposed to ask, and then my team and I will translate this into code and make her understand it as well. Programming languages I know. Well, actually, as soon as you've learned one language, it's quite easy to pick up a new one. So at school we learned mostly Java, MATLAB, Objective-C, C, and then apart from that I've worked with Python, JavaScript, C#, Ruby on Rails. Yeah, so there's a lot of different languages, and it sounds a lot, but they are very, very similar. I would say a big challenge in software development is to understand the problem. We focus a lot on finding the solution, but if you haven't understood the problem correctly, then you are not building the right solution anyway. So it's a lot about asking questions. So for example, since I don't have background in recruitment and HR, I have to ask a lot of questions to my colleagues to make sure that I understood correctly before I start building anything. So I think that's very important, to be able to collaborate and communicate with your colleagues and clients, partners, etc. That's a very difficult question, because I think it depends on a lot of different things. I think in general it's like a pretty well paid profession, not only in terms of salary, but since it's a profession in high demand, you have pretty good perks as well. For example, you usually have an extra week of holiday, you can have a lot of freedom to decide your working hours yourself and do a lot of team activities at work and stuff. And then depending on your background and your degree, the salary can range. So I think for like a recent graduate, it would maybe starting salary maybe around 30,000 Swedish kroners. And then from there, it really depends on what you focus on and how much responsibility you have, and also which city you're in. In Stockholm, there's a lot higher salaries, but also much higher cost of living. I like this question because it's part of my passion to really try to change this, to not be so male-dominated. I think I used to think it was hard, basically because you stand out, but as I get more and more experience, I realize that it's good to stand out. And I've realized in my experience that usually I have a different perspective and different point of view. Not just because I'm a woman, but because maybe my personality is different from the team. And that's usually very appreciated among my colleagues. So I think if you turn it around, you can see that there's a lot of benefits from being special. But it's, of course, boring to work in a homogeneous team. It's more fun if it's varied, both in gender, age, and backgrounds. About 5 years ago, 2 other female developers and myself, we decided to, just for the summer, do something fun to encourage women to code. So we hosted a programming camp for women where we taught beginners programming for 1 week. We went to a farmhouse out in the country and combined the programming exercises with like cooking together, going for walks, social activities. And it turns out that this became really popular. The camp had only 14 spots, but it sold out in a week when we had like 100 people on a waiting list. So then we decided that, okay, there is a big interest here, so let's make it an organization. And that's when we created Pink Programming, and we took in volunteers and more people to help. We started to collaborate with companies. And since then, since 5 years ago, it has grown, and we now have regular code events, at the moment online, so anyone from all over the world can join, and those coding events are free as well, and usually in collaboration with companies in the industry for both beginners and experienced developers. Not really like studied on university or something, but in the work you always have to be updated with new technology. So in one way you're always learning. Every single day you have to Google things, you have to look at tutorials, pick up new skills, new technologies. Sometimes you maybe do a short course online or on site, but usually it's very focused on a particular skill you need to solve a task. Okay, interesting. Well, I would say I do, but I don't really have the habit at the moment. I tend to be lazy and watch something instead of reading. Or if I read, it's like if I'm at the gym training. I think that depends on what you like as a person. I tend to choose jobs that I'm very passionate about, which is, I guess, both good and bad, because it means that the good thing is I enjoy going to work and it doesn't feel like work. The bad thing is that you can easily bring work home, and all of a sudden, work and your own life is intertwined. But I think if for me personally, if I would have a job that I just leave and go home, I don't think I would enjoy the work as much. When I'm not working, I love to exercise. And I think it's very important when you sit in front of the computer the whole day. But I've always loved exercising. So I do a lot of running, and I also teach yoga. Well, I started to do yoga when I was injured, so I couldn't run. Didn't like it in the beginning, but I thought it's good to stretch and like get some overall strength. And then I realized that yoga is so much more than a form of exercise. It's really more like a lifestyle, and I love the spiritual side of it, which is not very big here in the West. But I went to India and did a yoga teacher training there. Then when I came home, it took me a while to get over my own barriers, but eventually I started teaching at the local gym, and I really love it. So I teach yoga twice a week. Very creative. I mean, imagine that you have a problem and it doesn't matter how you solve it as long as you solve it. And there's always so many different ways to do it. And sometimes you can't do it the way you planned. You need to come up with a different solution. You need to always be creative, both in terms of the technical implementation, but also about how this can fit into the customer's needs. Yeah, it's very creative, I'd say. I think there's good that people are trying to break into systems because it teaches us about security. And there's even companies that give you, they call it bug bounties. So basically, if you manage to break into their system and you tell them, they will give you a reward, like they will give you money for it. They will be like, oh, thank you for telling us. So there can be like good hackers that are actually helping companies. It's quite playful and flexible. There's not much hierarchy. It's quite common, I think a common developer trait is that we like to come in late in the morning, which I love because I'm not a morning person. And usually that's fine. It's like as long as you get your work done, we don't care what time you're in the office or what time you open your computer at home. So that, and then also in the offices you'll find things like board games, table tennis, you'll find video games, you'll find free sodas, you'll find free snacks. So there's a lot of things that the companies do to try to make it like a nice, homely, fun atmosphere. I think, general IT knowledge like building web applications, and then security specialists. Cloud is becoming more and more popular, so cloud infrastructure, data scientists, so those that can handle large amounts of data and make sense of it. Most IT skills are in demand, I would say. Oh, okay. Thanks, everybody. Well, maybe by exercising. No, I always, if I go to one of those shops to buy something like a cream or something, they're like, oh, you don't use this cream, you don't use that cream. So no, I'm terrible at those things. A lot of things. I have been dreaming a long time about like having my own house at the countryside where I can like on the side host yoga retreats whenever I want to, code camps, maybe invite someone for like a cooking course, and also to just host big parties like a big midsummer party in the summer with all of my friends.